Hi, I appreciate you watching this video. Before I get too deep into this, I wanted to talk a little bit about my friend Jordan, who was recently diagnosed with an extremely aggressive form of adrenal cancer. It's really brutal and really sad. He's such a wonderful dude and such an awesome guy and a new husband. And I wanted to ask if you have the time and the money to donate to his GoFundMe below. I've linked it as a pinned comment and in the video description. Don't even worry about liking this video. Don't even worry about subbing. Don't check out my music this week. Please just help Jordan. Okay, back to what I was talking about. Hi, I'm Dylan Paris, and I've been meaning to make this video for a while now. I started my channel mostly doing videos with the Teenage Engineering OPZ and the iPad. Initially, it was a 2018 iPad Pro 11-inch, then I had an iPad mini, then I had a 12.9-inch iPad Pro 2020, and I recently sold that device. If you've been watching my iPad videos for the last few months, the ones that I have posted, you might notice that I've encountered a lot of frustration when it comes to iPad music. This culminated in my video Logic Pro on iPad Pro, It's Time, which was probably the angriest rant I've ever done on a camera, at least in a while. And it was about how I feel like Apple doesn't actually care about musicians on iPad. And this video is kind of an expansion of that. I've interacted with quite a few people who've only ever used iPads for music production. And that's so fascinating to me, but I could totally understand why that would be. iPad cost of entry, especially just the iPad model, the one that's just iPad and then the year after it, these are exceptionally cheap devices and extremely powerful for the price you're paying. And you could understand how someone with an iPhone or an iPad could get into GarageBand, could get into Core Gadget, and start just producing there. I started producing music electronically when I was 15 years old with a copy of Fruity Loops and a PC. And if I had been 15 when the iPad existed, I would imagine that's where I would have started. But because I started on PC and eventually got to Ableton, even played around with Logic and Reason a little bit, but mostly Ableton, I've had a lot of experience with the kinds of quality and stability that you can get on these PC and Mac apps. And when you come from that, dealing with all of the weird idiosyncrasies of the iPad, the fact that literally, like the true definition, the Merriam-Webster definition of literally, every time I sit down to make something on an iPad, I encounter some kind of weird glitch that stops one or more pieces of software working together properly. Usually, it's just a hanging note, right? So one of my apps will just keep playing a note, even though we're done playing MIDI. The MIDI is stopped. Every other track is stopped, but one or more apps are gonna just keep playing the last note they played or some random note. I've definitely seen this error or this kind of error in PC and Mac production as well, but it is a lot more rare. Whereas I almost encounter this every time I try to make something on iPad. Along with that, there are just, the glitches, the growling, the static, I'm actually not going to remember to play 3 of the notes in your chord, or, skipping MIDI. I see this a lot with AudioKit apps where they sound amazing, but if you program MIDI in any number of DAWs, right, like LK and AUM, Cubasis, the AudioKit apps, especially D1, will just stop playing every note in your MIDI. It'll play some of it, but it won't play all of it. See, I felt like I'm at a crossroads because so many of my popular videos are iPad videos, and I would have to imagine a lot of the people who follow me and watch my videos are here because of those iPad videos. And I want to be clear, I really like the iPad, but I really feel like Apple doesn't care about musicians on iOS. Now you could say, well, they made GarageBand, so how could you say that? And that's fair. I actually just put up a video with GarageBand, and I think it's a pretty nifty app. I think it's really cool that it's free if you own an iOS device. I think that is a huge, monumental game changer for new musicians and people who want to learn music production. So in that way, I think they care. But I don't think they care about the ecosystem of music production on iPad. They keep changing the standards. It used to be you would use Audio Bus, and you would use inter-app audio, and then they introduced Audio Unit V3, which was actually really exciting because it meant you could use plugins in different DAWs or digital audio workstations. This would mean you could take a Moog app like Model D or Model 15 and actually bring it into GarageBand or bring it into a different app like Cubasis 2. Some folks stayed on their own, like Cord Gadget, and you could make a good argument for why they did that, because Cord Gadget feels extremely stable because it's self-contained. The introduction of Audio Unit v3 introduced a lot of variables, and something I've been learning a lot in the last couple months are how small the teams are who make these iPad apps. I think it's part of why they're so cheap, right? I mean, when you talk about how much you're paying for a plugin on iPad versus PC or Mac, it is like 10% of the cost. And that's usually developed by 10% of the people, but it also usually has 10% of the consistency as far as utility. And I don't think this lays at the feet of the developers as much as I think Apple doesn't care to foster a really proper music production platform. And it's frustrating because they sell the iPad Pro. And the iPad Pro is what I've been using for the last 2.5 years. And I finally reached my breaking point when I realized I'd paid about $1,400 for the iPad Pro, right? I had the Magic Keyboard, I had the 12.9-inch 2020, 256 gig Wi-Fi iPad Pro, I had the Apple Pencil 2. All of that was over $1,400, and I was not getting $1,400 worth of utility out of that device. And it kind of pains me to say this, but I don't think anybody should buy an iPad Pro. Now, there's the short-term reason, and that is because as of the time of filming this, there are a lot of rumors that a new one is coming with much better screen technology, very likely mini LED. I have a mini LED Roku TV. It's the 6 Series 2020 model, and it's awesome. I'm not sure that the tech is going to be exactly the same, but the idea is you have dimming zones to compete with OLED, but you have the cheapness of LED versus OLED, which is far more costly to make and more prone to things like burn-in and other potential issues, although I actually really love OLED. So yeah, if you're watching this when I upload this, the biggest reason not to buy an iPad Pro right now is because there's a new one coming probably next month. However, I don't think you should buy that one either. And I don't think anyone should buy an iPad Pro. I've been thinking about this a lot. There's like maybe one group of people who should buy an iPad Pro, and they are artists. And they are artists who need 120 hertz and a really big screen. If you need 120 hertz and a really big screen, then go buy a 12.9-inch used 2018 iPad Pro when the next one comes out. That will make the 2018 iPad Pro 2 generations old, and that means that the price on the used market will be substantially lower than it is right now. If you can pay like $500 or $600 for a base 12.9-inch 2018 iPad Pro and get a used Apple Pencil 2, then maybe the iPad Pro is worth it. For everybody else, like literally everyone else, don't buy an iPad Pro. Like really don't. It's not pro. Like I had a friend after I posted my last rant about iPad, he's like, so are you saying the iPad Pro is a con? And shout out to Daniel. Yes, the iPad Pro is a con. It's a con. They're lying to you. The iPad Pro is a pro device the way the 13-inch MacBook Pro from 2015 was a pro device with its dual-core processor, its substandard RAM, and its integrated graphics. These are not pro devices. Your counter argument might be, well, I can do pro workflows on it, and I hear you. I ran a lot of my channel off of my 2020 iPad Pro using LumaFusion to edit my videos, using lots of different DAWs and plugins to make these videos. And I feel like when you're in iPad world, it can start to feel kind of like a cult, where you stop paying attention to the things that are really bad, you only look at the things that are really good, and you pay a lot of prices for it. And I'm just here to tell you, it's not worth it. The iPad Pro is not worth it, but the iPad as a platform is really cool. So I sold my iPad Pro and I got this guy. This is an iPad Air 2019 or iPad Air 3. It has a headphone jack. Oh my God, remember those? That's something musicians really need. So now I can listen to what I'm producing and charge my device or plug in a MIDI keyboard without an adapter. That leads me to one of my biggest points about Apple not caring about music producers. They took the headphone jack out of the iPad Pro, and then they took the headphone jack out of the iPad Air. So now I can't recommend a brand new iPad to anybody unless you get the 2020 base model, which maybe, or the currently existing iPad mini, which I think is also rumored to be replaced. Apple hates admitting their mistakes. It took them, I think, 4 or 5 years to fix the butterfly keyboard in the MacBooks and finally replace it with the Magic Keyboard. And while they're on the topic of fixing their mistakes from the past, they really need to put headphone jacks back in every single iPad, because Otherwise, I just do not believe that they care about music production on iPad. And the fact that they've never put Logic on there, the fact that they didn't clean up the audio unit situation, the fact that multiple times I've upgraded my hardware and then had really substantially worse user experiences. When the iPad Pro 2018 first came out, it borked all audio unit quality. Forum users and different smart people started to realize that Apple had moved all audio processing to the low power cores under the assumption that all audio being processed was like Spotify or SoundCloud background audio and not a DAW like Moog Model D's synthesizer running in Cubasis. Just one instance of Moog Model D in one DAW would like tank and static and freak out the way like a CPU freaks out in Ableton when you actually use all of the CPU. And it took them 3 months to fix that. So I went from a 2018 iPad to a 2018 iPad Pro and had a worse user experience when it came to music production. And there was nothing we could do except sit and twiddle our thumbs, hope that they eventually updated iOS to fix that problem. And they did, and eventually it became pretty decent. But there was still no headphone jack, and you still had to have dongles, and just buy a bunch. I did. I had 3 dongles, and if I forgot one, then I'm just on a train or on a bus for 30, 40 minutes, and I can't do the thing I bought my iPad for. And that was one of just many experiences across the line. If you're paying attention to the larger Apple world, you might know that they've moved all their laptops to the M1 processor. And lots of tech reviewers and lots of people are giving them lots of kudos because the power of the M1 is a lot more substantial than the power of the Intel chips, and it's quieter and it lasts longer on a battery charge. And that's all really cool. But if you're a musician, you might also know that Big Sur, the update that went out last year that is perma-installed on all of the M1 Macs, broke a lot of music production software, and now Apple's just expecting everyone to fix it all again. And I've found in the past that when Apple breaks the functionality of music software via updates, often the devs will then just charge you to upgrade. They don't fix what worked before, what they designed to Apple specifications. If you were on Isotope 8 and you wanted it to run properly, well, good luck, go get Isotope 9, which I did. And part of me is mad at Isotope, but also I get it because Apple sent out a spec and shipped a bunch of computers and then changed their operating system and then told everyone to go fix it for free. So this is another rant, and honestly, I get it if you disagree with me. There are a lot of pros for the iPad. There are a lot of pros for Apple when it comes to music production. Their audio drivers are really good. The Apple audio drivers are a really great counter argument to they don't care about music production. Windows doesn't have substantial real-time audio drivers. You have to use ASIO or you have to use an external sound card, which I do. I have a Native Instruments Complete 6 and it's been great for years. So I just plug that in and I'm fine. But counter argument, obviously, if I need that, well then why am I complaining about the headphone jack? I get it. But $1,400 of iPad got me a cheap imitation of a laptop that could barely run most of the software I wanted to use. It gave me watered down worse versions of almost everything. And $2,200 for a PC gave me a 4K OLED screen with an RTX 3070, 1 terabyte of M.2 storage with another open slot, a Core i7 8-core processor that can run all of my video editing apps, all of my music production apps. I can play games at higher quality than the newest consoles. And that was only $800 more than what I spent on the iPad. And selling the iPad with all of its accessories for $1,200 paid for over half of the cost of that laptop. I've become a lot more budget conscious recently. I'm trying to not have credit card debt anymore. And I have had enough people tell me, yo, my friend bought an iPad because of you, or I went out and bought this thing because of your video, that I feel very Peter Parker right now. With great power comes great responsibility, and I'm telling you, don't buy an iPad Pro. Don't do it. Don't give Apple your hard-earned money for new hardware right now. If you really want an iPad, go buy a used iPad Air 3. Go buy an older gen iPad Pro if you really need the big screen. Go buy even just the iPad 2020, maybe an iPad Air 4, but I think that's overpriced and it doesn't have a headphone jack and it's not that much of an improvement over the Air 3, so I got the Air 3. Because for $440, I could get an open box Air 3 with 256 gigs of storage, and for $600, I could get a 64 gig brand new iPad Air 4. Sometimes they go on sale to $550, but that's still, you need to pay like $700 or more to get 256 gigs. Anyway, I'm rambling. Don't buy an iPad Pro for music production. Don't buy an iPad Pro for video production. Only buy an iPad Pro if you're an artist, and don't buy a new one. And really, if you're really looking at an iPad Pro and you're like, Dylan, you're an idiot, I don't agree with you, my life is different, cool. don't buy an iPad Pro right now because they are about to release new ones. All the rumors point to next month or March, which could be this month, or it could be in the past and you have an iPad Pro 2024 and you're just watching this because the algorithm. I don't think Apple cares about musicians. They make some good software, especially on Mac. Logic Pro runs pretty well. There's a lot of Logic believers. It sounds like it's gotten even better since I used to use it back in 2014. Props to Logic. They didn't put it on their Pro iPad, and I have a whole video about that. They let Big Sur break functionality of a bunch of stuff. They let the M1 transition break functionality of a lot of music apps. More so than almost any other apps that were broken by the transition to M1, music apps were at the forefront. I don't think they take pro audio seriously. I don't think they take musicians seriously. And I don't think you should put your money where their mouth is. So yeah, thanks for watching. I am gonna make iPad videos. I'm really happy to have an iPad Air. I do like the iPad. I just don't feel like it likes me back very much. And like I said earlier in the video, if you have the time and the money, I would be so beyond appreciative if you could help my friend Jordan. The GoFundMe link below. Consider sharing it, consider donating. The US healthcare system is really bad. If you're watching this not in the US, you might wonder why we even need this, and it's because they don't care about us. All right, have a good week, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.